I'm not the Kentucky Derby Weather Bureau. I'm the Kentucky Derby winner, baby. Did I tell you about this? I haven't told you. Have I talked to you since then? Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't. It's not for public consumption. But did I tell you about the Derby?
No, we have not talked since the Derby. And what is not for public consumption? I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, whatever we might have talked about. These people trying to pry in our business. Fuck them.
I saw that it wasn't journalism that won. It was one of the other horses.
Well, but now here's the thing. See here, there's more than one way to skin a racehorse, because what Stace was doing was she figured out a way. You can place a bet on a horse race on your phone now. Were you aware of this?
Yeah, I knew about that.
God damn it. That's what did this just come up? How in the world is it? But children could be doing this. We're teaching the children to gamble. They've all got phones. I didn't know it was just that. I thought you had to go down to the track with a cigar stuck in your face and walk up to the window.
You never had to just go to the track. You could have gone to the OTB down the street.
The who?
Off-track betting, OTB.
We don't have that. So we got a big old racetrack with 150,000 people in it. They do their betting over there the way God intended it.
There's no OTB at all in Louisville, Kentucky, home of the
I have
Kentucky
never
Derby?
seen an OTB or had people talk about an OTB.
Man, sometimes the line is out the door in the OTB. You're like, what the hell's happening today?
Well, are you sure it's not the OP? You sure it's not the OPP?
It's not the OPP.
I heard the line was out the door for that too.
Well, I don't know.
But nevertheless, back to the Derby. Stace figured out a way.
The Porkies, no matter what we're talking about.
Well, hey, that's all, folks. So Stace got on her phone and figured out you can see the horses, because I wasn't paying any attention, because you know me, I'm constantly immersed in our work here, working to build the empire. And she read off the names of the horses. And before she even read them to me, before I'd heard about them, she said, I know which one you're going to pick. Journalism. Well, obviously, right? Because of the family connection. But he's also the favorite. I didn't know that until I heard the name, and I picked it anyway. But when it came time to put the money down, Brian Latt, to lay that money down, I said, it's been raining. It fucking poured rain all goddamn Derby day with those fucking lunatics out there in their pink suits and fucking frilly hats. And the women were even fucking more outlandish. And they're all into ponchos, and people are wearing these suits with these mud boots. And it just rained. It rained all week. And finally, it doesn't rain for the Derby, but the track is what they call sloppy, which one of the newscasters said it was like walking through quicksand. It was that just soaked. And I said, something can go wrong, even though he's the favorite, even though he may be pure in heart and says his horse prayers by night. When the rain comes down and the ground is muddy, he might end up a fright. I said, I'm going to hedge my bet here. See, that's where the phrase came from. I said, I'm going to bet journalism to place. And that way he's got two cracks at it. And wouldn't you know which pony won the pony, or which pony won the Derby, or which Derby won the pony? Son of a bitch, he won. I won because he came in second. See how that works?
Yeah.
See, you gotta talk to I don't know. It's on Stacy's phone. It's not real money.
Oh,
Maybe they might be.
I meant how much did Stacy win?
Well, I've said they might be paying her, but I think it's $60-something or whatever is what she said before she left on that trip to Paris. The
racetrack's the one place you can go to and still see like the classic characters of old that like society has shunned. You look in the stands, you sit amongst the people in the stands, you're like, there's some people here that they have nothing to do, and this is it, and they're waiting for some kind of hustle here.
Buck Robley used to, not only did Buck Robley used to hang around I don't know if it's horse racing in New Orleans. It might have been dog race. There was a variety of races of animals that he attended, dogs and horses and things of that nature. But that's where he met that fucking Elvis impersonator. And what did he have a used car lot too? Was it that fucking corny that it was real life because you couldn't make it up? But he remember the North American Wrestling Federation. Buck Robley at a racetrack met a fucking guy with money that wanted to back Buck Robley in 1991 to bring wrestling back to New Orleans after Watts had gone out of business and blah, blah, blah. And they got television. I actually did a couple of the televisions. He had me come down there and manage. I went once and did 2 TVs in one night. And bless him, Paul Orndorff was there. A few of us were suckered into this. The fucking backer came out on TV as a manager with an Elvis gimmick. At least he looked like Elvis. I don't know if he, fully doing the gimmick. And Buck had sold him on the idea. I'm trying to remember this after 30 something years. And it was such a convoluted scheme. Buck had sold him on the idea he's going to bring him out and make him a manager. And then he's going to build him up, and then he's going to turn him babyface and let him bring all the underprivileged kids to the matches for free, and he'd be the biggest goddamn babyface in town. And I believe I actually sold this guy the contract of somebody. And made fun of him at the same time. The clip was on Twitter a few years ago. But I think they did 2, maybe 3 tapings, and then suddenly the guy was like, what the fuck? Am I going to be a hero yet? And this is costing a lot of money and safe and A.
Would that have been a good thing for Smoky Mountain Wrestling? Would that have been something that helped you? The idea that right around the time you were starting up and within, the next year or two, if there were other small promotions / wannabe territories or, claiming they're going to be territories opening up in surrounding states, just in terms of talent sharing and just a system, would it have helped you or hurt you?
Well, it would have helped if any of them were, I don't want to say successful, because then people are about Cornette, but this lasted 3 TV tapings. I'm talking, we were there for 4 years. If someone had been competitive with us to the point, not competitive, but in terms of, okay, we can last a few years so that this thing could start coming together, because you can't just Jim Crockett, for fuck's sake. Remember when he tried to start up
he actually came into your backyard. That's a little different.
Well, but no, it wasn't even. No, he didn't run against us. He came to Chattanooga. We didn't have Chattanooga as a market yet. We got it for TV later, but we were never able to run it.
He came to Chattanooga, used your talent, and then tried to poach the Rock and Roll Express.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. He didn't come in our backyard. He just came adjacent to us, borrowed our ring because I wanted to help him out, and fucking then got mad when the Rock and Roll wouldn't give him the dates that they'd already given me. But the point is, they knew same thing. He didn't last more than, how many tapings did they do? Paulie was going to be his booker, and he had this and that and the other thing. But I can't remember. That might have actually not been a rhetorical question. How many tapings did they do?
I don't know if they did more than one in Chattanooga, but then they moved to Dallas.
No, they went to Dallas and did.
And it bombed. Yeah.
But and I mean 2 or 3 more, maybe, was it? But that's the point, is that.
Did you ever see the TV?
I'm sorry?
Did you ever see the TV?
I saw some matches from it.
Like hosted in the studio by Tully Blanchard, like as a just a down the middle announcer, no heel Tully Blanchard or anything. The Reverend Tully Blanchard.
He straightened up, But point being, and Memphis was across the state, and we worked somewhat with Randy when Randy Hales was booking, and Lawler worked for us because we were all working in the WWF periphery at that point. But besides Memphis, there was nobody else really running on a regular level for long enough to establish any kind of relationship with, and except for, again, whatever the fuck was going on in Philadelphia between 1993 and 1995. We just watched the Eddie Gilbert Dark Side, and Paulie was going to do that, but he was also, there was going to be a part of Crockett's thing. And Todd Gordon, who I never met. To this day, I don't think I've ever fucking stood and said hello to Todd Gordon.
Oh, you must have. He was the ring announcer for Goodheart. You must have met him.
I didn't know that. See, I didn't, because he wasn't anybody to.
He was one of them, I believe.
Okay, he wasn't anybody to pay attention to at that point. If I did 2 of Joel Goodhart's shows, I think. The point is, Todd Gordon was not a person that I would have paid attention to at that point. Otherwise, to be polite if he crossed my path because he was the announcer or whatever. But it's, oh, that's Todd Gordon. I'll remember him when he is famous later. I don't know.
You know why? You know why I knew who he was when ECW started? He was in the. Oh fuck! You would know better than me. Was it ABC or NBC? They did the Nightline, I guess it was maybe, about WCW right after Elegante debuted. And they showed Jim Herd and Elegante and the planning stages of the costume. And they showed Todd Gordon and his family. Like, here's, Todd Gordon in Philadelphia watching wrestling with his family. Never, he would one day fund, the craziest shit ever.
Well, but anyway, back to the topic. Between 1993 and 1995, if whatever was going on in Philadelphia, I didn't have time to get involved. And again, we've talked about Tennessee wouldn't work in Philadelphia and Philadelphia wouldn't work in Tennessee at that point in time. And those guys were local and my guys were local because none of us were setting the world on fire and wanted to buy a bunch of plane tickets. And there was nobody else besides the big companies with the contracts and the Picadillos and all that stuff.
Toward, 95, you have Ozark Mountains there by then. Again, I don't know exactly what Bert was doing and how full the schedule.
I swear to God, the Dutch Mantell's line, the steroids, the guys aren't even on food, could have applied to the Ozark Mountain Daredevils at that point.
Was there anything serious out of Georgia? I mean, you did stuff with Sammy Kent, but
there was nothing really. It was all independent. There was not any territory structure where they had television and regular towns that they promoted and were in a position to trade people back and forth and pay an outside guy to come in and make any difference, that type of thing. So,
Heyman's 93 is a really interesting year because he ends up booking ECW. And, imagine, the Gilberts knew not just when Kevin Sullivan was there, when all of a sudden Ted Petty was booked. Because that's a Heyman guy. I think that was like they're doing something different here with Paul. But if you look at 93, he begins the year, he's left WCW. He goes on the Arezzi show and announces that he's doing something that we've never heard of called HD, high definition. And he's filming in some town in Texas because they had the guy on. And they shot this television taping because Ted Petty teamed up with Dean Malenko as the Kimono Dragons. And Jake Roberts was there, Bob Orton. So Paulie was doing that. At the same time, Crockett, knowing that his non-compete is about to expire, at some point Crockett and Heyman connected and became good I don't even know if good friends is the right word. We're planning on
pump the brakes. Yeah, became business associates.
We're planning on doing stuff. When would that have happened? Did that surprise you when you heard that Jim Crockett was working with Paul Heyman?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I remember the HD project you talked about. Did that footage ever make the light of day, by the way?
I do not believe so. I've always wanted to see it because they did a second taping too at the Manhattan Center in early '94 with Terry Funk against Sabu, and has only been fan footage. I don't think that ever.
But am I correct in remembering from the time today, the impression was, whether factual or not, that Paul had found somebody that wanted to get in on the ground floor of HD television production and convinced him that wrestling was the way and somehow didn't pay a lot of money for it to happen?
I think it was the World Wrestling Network. I think that was what it was going to be.
Well, but see, that was Crockett's thing too. And if they were in Texas, that's where Jimmy Crockett had moved to Dallas in the late 80s. Some said because they wanted to establish the office there in a major metropolitan area and media market. And some said to get away from the rest of the family.
Well, Watts did have an office there. When they bought the UWF, they got the Dallas
yes,
office.
But Jimmy didn't have to goddamn move out and live there.
Right.
And he ended up moving, and he had an ice cream store. That's the thing. is while he was doing that non-compete with TBS, finally, whatever he moved out there, he was doing whatever the fuck he was doing. And then when he was wanting to put this television thing together again, the World Wrestling Network, and do these tapings, he called me, and he was working the cash register at his ice cream store. Because he said, hold on, and I heard him, ding, ding, thank you. I mean, he was making fucking change. And I'm not trying to say that Jimmy needed money. I'm trying to say that Jimmy was probably going nuts and wanted something to fucking do and get back in the wrestling business, because he had plenty of money. He didn't have to work in his own fucking ice cream store, right? But I think he didn't realize.
It's like that Seinfeld episode.
Well, yeah. And he didn't realize, which I didn't fully realize, that wrestling was going to get worse in 1992 and 3 than it was in 1990. And I don't think that he fully realized. And I was just trying to do a regional territory and not be national television and do all this bullshit. He's trying to get back into business again with the World Wrestling Network. And he's going to put this thing together. And he's planning it while he's working the cash register at the ice cream store. And he didn't realize that this shit was going to get even worse, because Vince was getting all the attention and all of it was bad, and steroid trials and phony bullshit, and Hogan's going to Hollywood and whatever the fuck we've all covered. And so again, when he did the first taping in Chattanooga, I believe, if I want to say, is because Ronnie West, who had been a long time, from the time he was a referee in the 60s, from Chattanooga, or from right outside there, Cleveland, had been a referee for Goulas, and then had worked for Jarrett, and then had worked for Georgia, and then had worked as a road agent, a referee at WCW, and etc. So I think he thought Ronnie could draw him a good house there for the taping. And that's when he borrowed my ring. I said, we're not working. He had the Rock and Roll Express. He had all these guys, because we didn't have a fucking date that night, right? And then, he wanted to just, rock and roll, come on, we're going to do this again. And they're like, bullshit, you've done one TV. We're working there 15 days a month. What are you? Jimmy, let's calm down. And he got miffed, and he went to Dallas, and they flamed the fuck out. And I'm not saying Jimmy was away for 5 years because contractually he had to be.
That is remarkable.
But during that time, he thought he could do it the fucking again, and it had got a lot worse.
The fact that he had 5 years after the sale is pretty remarkable.
Well, I didn't negotiate the fucking contract.
Was David Crockett there until the end?
I believe so, in some capacity. I mean, they gave him a variety of jobs and departments, but I think he was, at something until very soon before, if not till the end, I would think.
Should Jim Crockett have had like wrestler-themed ice cream flavors?
I think then Vince would have beat him in another fucking deal. He'd have taken him to court and sued him for a gimmick infringement.
All right, this has been, I don't know what this has been. Kentucky Derby talk.